Hi guys, I know it's been a while since I've posted here. I have decided to take this channel in a slightly different direction. I will now start posting what if stories based on different games. I hope you all enjoy. This is the story, What If Dante Had to Hunt Vincent Valentine? Prologue. The city was silent. Not many people were out on the streets of Ruin, and the demons that were usually out were scarce. They didn't come out of the underworld often as much as they used to. For if they did, the demon hunter would get them, and they knew that. The night was a silent one, with only the yellow moon shining high above the sky and the white stars twinkled all around it. There was nothing but silence. The deserted streets were as dark as they were silent. Only one was lit up, and that street led up towards a highly lit building with a large neon sign that flashed brightly. The sign said, "Devil Never Cry." It was the home of the demon hunter, Dante, and his personal business that he had created since the death of his mother. The lights were on inside, proving that someone was up late. But that someone, clearly Dante, was unaware that he would soon have a visitor. The visitor was standing outside in the dark street, just looking up at the highly lit building. Their emerald green eyes just stared at the flashing sign, gleaming with excitement. They were wearing a black hooded cloak, hiding their identity and gender. The person was small though and quite petite looking. They were also excited about something that was about to happen. It was time for payback. Inside, Dante was sitting in his chair, head leaned back and his eyes had his feet propped up on his desk and his hands folded on his stomach. He appeared to be asleep. But he wasn't asleep. He was actually neither asleep nor awake. He knew he should just call it a day and head upstairs to get some sleep. There was no way that someone would be out this late. And if they were, they must have been crazy. It was way after midnight. They should have been asleep. But then again, demons didn't sleep. So if they weren't going to go to sleep, neither would the hunter. It had been quite a while since Dante last had a job. The demon hunting had slowed down a notch, for not many demons decided to show their ugly faces. They knew that Dante would get them the very minute they started to terrorize the people of his city. Dante, himself, hadn't changed very much since his last crusade. He was still the same. He kept his platinum white hair slightly long, yet short too. It had grown a few inches since the last time he hunted. His eyes were still as icy blue as ever. He still favored his red trench coat, with black underneath. His amulet was still around his neck, with the 3 jewels that enhanced his demon powers. His prized collection of swords were hanging on the wall with the many skulls of demons he once hunted, with only a few guns that he had collected over the years. But his favorite guns, ebony and ivory, were in their place at his sides. They stayed there at all times, no matter what. He even slept with those things under his pillow. Dante was nearly dozing off when he felt a strange presence enter the room. It made him completely awake, but he kept his eyes shut, frowning deeply. He listened hard to the soft footsteps walking towards him. The intruder was no doubt being as quiet as much as they could as they snuck up towards him. The demon hunter's hands relaxed, slowly slipping away from one another as if he had fallen asleep, slowly sliding down to where his guns were. And when the intruder was too close for his comfort, his eyes snapped open and he looked right at them. His guns were in his hand, trained on the alarmed intruder, who only stepped back but not reacted. You know, it's not very smart to sneak into someone's place and bother them when they're trying to sleep. You may get shot, Dante warned as he slowly placed his feet on the wooden floor. The stranger didn't reply as they slowly reached up and grabbed the hood. Carefully, they lowered the hood while saying, "I suppose you're right. It's not smart, especially when it's you, demon hunter, son of a demon." Dante wasn't surprised that this person knew who he was and what he was. Half of the human population that still existed knew him and his origin. They knew what he did and how he did it. How could this woman not know who he was? But he was surprised by how she looked. The woman standing before him was a very beautiful and elegant woman. She had dark brown hair which was pulled into a loose braid with long bangs hanging over her emerald green eyes. A deep red ribbon tied in her hair, spilling down her back. She was wearing a black outfit under the dark cloak. A black top with long sleeves and the bottom cut just a few inches from below her busts, showing her toned stomach and belly button. Her pants were of black leather with mid-knee-high black leather boots. A few belts were around her right leg where she had 2 long blades. She had the looks of an angel, a dark angel to be more precise. She was very fair-skinned and quite exquisite. More than the woman he usually worked with. Lady, Trish and Lucia had been extremely beautiful, but this woman was definitely more beautiful than they were. "Who are you?" Dante asked, finding himself at last. The dark beauty just smiled coolly at him, her green eyes sparkling with delight. They never left Dante's icy eyes once as she moved forward. "I am Jen. I've come to you to service. I need a demon destroyed." She then arched her pencil-thin eyebrow. "Devil Never Sigh is still open, correct?" Dante nodded as he slid his guns away and stood up. "Yeah, it's still open. I'm Dante, the one who runs this place. What kind of demon do you need killed?" Jen smiled at him in a bittersweet way. "A demon of such wickedness. His name is Chaos. His name says all. He lives inside the body of a wicked man who is just as wicked as he is. He kills people without emotion or care for the person at all." Dante frowned at the news. That was definitely something new. He had never known of a demon possessing the body of a man. He had never seen it happen or hear of it. Tilting his head, he squinted his eyes at Jen. "The man, you say, is wicked. What has he done?" Jen's smile never wavered once. She just kept her emerald green eyes on his icy blue ones. "He killed a woman many years ago when he was supposed to protect her," she announced to him. "Really?" Dante asked suspiciously. "And what's it to you that he killed this woman? Who is she to you?" Jen's smile was now gone and her eyes had gone very dark. "My mother, Demon Hunter. The woman was my mother," she told him. Dante crinkled his nose a little as he gave her a serious look. "This isn't about revenge, is it? Because I don't do humans. I'm a demon hunter, not a bounty hunter," he told her in a very serious way. Jen shook her head as she looked just as serious. "No, this is not about revenge. Not entirely. It's just about the demon. The demon is a monster, Dante. It kills people, men, women and children, not caring for their lives or for the people that once loved them. It causes grief and suffering wherever it goes. It must be stopped, but no one can do it. No one but you. You have the powers to do it." "And the wicked man, how does he die in this plot?" Dante asked sarcastically. Jen smiled again. "Well, he and the demon shares the same body. You kill the man, you kill the demon. Therefore, job well done. However, I must warn you. The man has companions. His friends will try to stop you, I fear. They are as wicked as he is. They are mercenaries, terrorists. They killed countless of lives, caring only about themselves and about money. You don't have to kill them, but they might get in your way. Your target is only the demon and the man, but if they do get in the way, kill them. But make sure the man dies. He has caused enough pain and suffering," she told Dante. Dante just frowned before he turned away, digging into his pocket. He pulled out his lady coin, glancing at Jen. "If it's heads," he muttered before flipping the coin into the air. He caught it right out of the air and looked at what the verdict was. With a nod, he put it back into his pocket. "You're in luck. It's heads. I'll take the job. Where's the demon man?" he asked as he went over to the wall and pulled off his sword, Alistair, from the wall. "Good," Jen said, sounding happy again. "Prepare yourself, demon hunter. It's going to be a bumpy ride." Dante frowned with confusion and looked back at him. He didn't know what she meant by that. "What?" he asked. Jen only smirked in such a way that it actually made a shiver go right up his back. He did not like that look. He really had a bad feeling about this. Author's note. All right, not for an explanation about this story. The other day I had just gotten done beating Devil May Cry 2 when I came up with a pretty interesting idea. I thought, what would happen if Dante was suddenly transported to the world of Final Fantasy VII and he was hired to kill Vincent because he's a so-called demon? Well, I decided to put this story to the test, and I'm hoping that whoever reads it will like what I've been doing with it. Now this is only just the beginning and I will have the next chapter as soon as I can. But I can guarantee it, this will be a very interesting story. So please tell me what you think of it so far, even though there's not very much to say about it just yet. The day was quite nice for a change. The sun was shining brightly and it was nothing but blue skies. There were only a few white fluffy clouds, rolling across the sky. The grass was regrowing around the old city of Midgar, growing rapidly actually. Life was coming back to life near the city. Trees grew tall, reaching for the sky as if wanting to touch the was looking like it had turned into summer. It was a beautiful day. Nothing bad would happen. In the once called Midgar, there was some kind of celebration going on. The remaining people of Midgar City were celebrating the downfall of the geostigma. Children were laughing and playing together while adults were talking or laughing about things that had recently happened or about how far they had come. Music was blasting out of homemade speakers, and people were dancing to it. The hosts of the party were the favorable group of Avalanche, or at least most of them. Tifa Lockhart was serving drinks to people, laughing as she watched her little helper, Marlene Wallace, was playing with Denzel, an orphan boy that she had taken into her home. Barrett Wallace was assisting her while chatting with the leader of their band. Cloud conversation was about their young friend, Yuffie, and about how well she was getting along with a certain red-haired Turk, Reno no doubt. The two of them were talking to one another while dancing behind the music booth. Rude was with them, making himself look like a bouncer while a young man close by was talking to a bunch of construction workers. The man, who actually was Rufus Shinra, was planning on rebuilding the city, and this time no one was going to rule anyone. No one outside from Avalanche knew exactly who Rufus was. He was going by the name of Ryu Ash, and that was that. If anyone knew his true identity, they would probably kill him. He was wearing a dark business outfit, which was his old uniform dyed dark blue. He was hiding his fine, delicate hair under a bandana, which really didn't go with his outfit. But he was trying to keep anyone from recognizing him. The Turks were pretending that he was a wealthy man, who was paying them for protection. So far, it was working. An Avalanche hadn't said a thing about him, not yet anyway. They were keeping an eye on Rufus to make sure that he wasn't going to repeat his past actions. As for everyone else, they were living their own lives and making their own futures. A few of them couldn't have made it to the celebration, for family situations. But there was still one person that all of them were worried about. He crossed all their minds, making them wonder where he was and what he was doing. Every one of the Avalanche members couldn't help but worry about Vincent Valentine. Ever since Cloud had killed Sephiroth and the three silver-haired remnants, Vincent had once again distanced himself from everyone, going off on his own and hardly keeping in contact. He did check in once in a while with Tifa or Sid. He had bought a phone soon after the geostigma crisis, to make a certain little girl stop bothering him about having one. Marilyn always did have a certain effect on people. The reason why everyone was so worried about him, was because he was still keeping to himself, hardly opening up to everyone. And he still moped about sins, only not as much as he used. No one in Avalanche knew where Vincent usually was at. He had told everyone that he was going to return to the Nibelheim mansion in the town, probably to return to his coffin. But when Sid had gone to check on him a few times, Vincent wasn't there. It made the others worry too much that Nanaki tried to track him. The lion-dog creature had discovered Vincent to be at Lucretia's cave, which was where everyone was sure he spent most of his time. Sad thing was, Lucretia was never there when Vincent went to visit her. It was like she had completely vanished. The theory the Avalanche members had come up with was that Lucretia had finally decided to move on. That she had returned to the Promised Land. But no one could exactly be sure. Tifa had pointed out, once, that she seemed to be just like Vincent, that she would be trapped on the planet as he was. It was really sad to think about. Before Sid had left to go to the old Midgar city, he stopped in Nibelheim to see if the ex-Turk wanted to join the party, and surprise, Vincent wasn't there. No one really knew where he was this time. It was possible he was at Lucretia's cave, but it seemed pointless. She wouldn't be there, and everyone knew that Vincent wouldn't go to the party if he was in his depression state again. He still couldn't forgive himself for what happened so many years ago. He just couldn't let go the fact that Lucretia was no longer who she once was. And it was sad to think that he would never let go his dark past. "Hey, Cloud." Cloud turned his blue eyes onto Woe was speaking to him, and it was Reeve. "Hey, Reeve," he said thoughtfully, turning his full attention onto the toymaker, looking quite curious. Reeve shrugged as he sat himself down next to him and waved at Tifa and Barrett. "Hey, Tifa, Barrett. How are you?" Tifa and Barrett both smiled at him. "Hey, Reeve, I'm good. Want something to drink?" the pretty bartender said. Reeve nodded. "Yes, thank you," he told her. Barrett nodded as he wiped the countertop. "Well, I'm slammin'. How are you doing, Shinra manager?" he asked, gruff as ever. Reeve just smiled at the big black man. "I'm good, Barrett, thank you for asking." He then shifted his eyes onto Cloud. "So how's business?" Cloud shrugged lazily. "It's going just fine. There's been a lot of packages needing to be delivered lately." A lot of letters. I've already delivered over 100 letters this week. He slowly picked up his drink and sipped it, then set it down again. I'm thinking about expanding the business. We're in need of more delivery boys. Sid joined in. He's been flying all over for me. Barrett is somewhat helping. He's still working with the oil company. As for some of our new, he paused looking towards the Turks, who were still dancing or just standing around, then to Rufus. Our new business partners, they're working with us to build up Strife's deliver service. He hasn't done anything to betray us or break the contract, but I still don't trust him. Cloud told his older friend. Reeve slowly nodded as he looked over to see Rufus shaking hands with the construction workers, sealing the deal they had been talking over. He's a changed man, Cloud. You must admit that. He hasn't been the same since Shinra fell. Cloud shrugged again. Maybe. But Shinra is a cunning man. It's possible he's biding his time to do something. And I'm not going to put my guard down so he can stab us in the back. He told him seriously. Reeve just nodded before looking around. His smile slightly faded, but still remained. I see our favorite tall, dark friend isn't here. He's missing quite the celebration. He said with a light shrug. Cloud shook his head. You know Vincent. He likes his privacy. More like solitude. Barrett grumbled, making the others faintly smile. Tifa nudged Barrett to make him shut up. Hey, come on, guys. You know Vincent. It's the big crowds. He hates too many people being around him. It's the noise that makes him edgy. It's just too much for him. She said, giving Reeve his drink. Reeve slowly nodded as he took it. Thank you, Tifa. His dark eyes went back to Cloud. Where's our dark friend anyway? Still visiting Lucretia's cave, hoping to see her. Who knows? I don't see a point of him going there. She's never there, Cloud said, shrugging. Tifa shook her head again as she wiped her hands on a rag. The last time I talked to him, he was on his way to the Forgotten City. He said he wanted to study the ruins and the language of the ancients. I think he's curious about their mysterious dialect. She told all the men. Cloud slowly nodded. Well, if he finds anything, he'll let us know. I'm just as curious as he is. He said, then went back to drinking the drinks Tifa was serving. The spoken person, of course, was making a little progress with his studies. Vincent was studying the words of the ancients in the shell house near Eris's lake. He was concentrating hard on the words, looking at the symbols carefully. He had taken a few notes on a pad of paper he had purchased in Bone Village, but there wasn't very much. He was still the same as always. He wore the same clothes, had the same dark and mysterious attitude, never speaking to others when they tried to talk to him. He really hadn't changed over the past few weeks, or years. The only difference about him was he now had a mobile phone clipped to his belt. Vincent was standing before one of the walls, studying the ancient language and quite carefully. He was reading the words slowly, trying to piece the puzzle together with what he already knew about the ancient language. He knew a little of the ancient words, after working with Professor Gast as a Turk, but not much. He knew only a few words. With the words that he knew, he was trying to put the puzzle pieces together, trying to figure out what they were saying. He had removed his large red cloak, leaving it folded over a chair. Quote. The silent ex-Turk muttered as he gently touched a symbol with his golden claws. Then he turned his attention onto the pad of paper, reading it carefully. There wasn't much he had written, but the only things he did right was, the word of the ancients, and, the silver road leads up to the promised land. But otherwise, he had nothing. During his studying hour, Vincent was very unaware that he was about to meet someone just as dangerous as he was. Just outside the dead city, a strong breeze was starting to kick up. It was twirling the dirt and leaves around, building up some kind of cyclone right out of the sky. Only the cyclone wasn't exactly facing upwards. It was coming almost like on its side. Then there was a cracking sound, almost like lightning, and some sort of hole or ripples appeared in the cyclone. Blue sparks flew as something came flying out of it, crashing and rolling across the ground and over the bumpy terrain. Dante just laid in the dirt, quite motionless, as if he wasn't alive or had been knocked out unconscious. But he was breathing, and eventually came the grumbling. He finally pushed himself up to his feet, brushing dirt and leaves from his cloths. He was grumbling about his new employer. It would have been nice of Jen if she only told him about the landing. She should have anyway, otherwise he wouldn't have came flying from a damn portal and crashed to the ground, scraping himself against some sharp rocks. He was lucky enough that the rocks hadn't torn his favorite trench coat. and if they had, he would have really been in a bad mood. Only minutes before Dante came this strange place, he had learned from Jen that she was from a different world, some place that was just called the planet. Now, he was used to traveling to the demon world and back, but a whole new world that could have been billions or trillions of light years away from his own world. That was something he couldn't believe. That is until Jen opened up the portal before he could express his second thoughts. Jen only told him what the man's name was and then made him go through the strange wormhole. The entire journey had made him feel queasy, but that was because he had fallen through some weird tunnel, whizzing past speeding stars and planets. It was just a little too much for him to even think about. But now, he was safe and sound on solid ground and it made him feel better. Without a word, Dante stood straight and looked around his new surroundings. He couldn't help but blink in surprise on where he was. He was standing on a cliffside, overlooking a small valley, which had some kind of ancient city. It was surrounded by dead-looking white trees and seashell-shaped houses. The thing was, he saw houses in a city, but he saw no people. It seemed to completely deserted. Dante began to wonder if there was even anyone in that city. Making up his mind, he began to find his way down a path, heading towards the ruined city. Maybe, just maybe, he would find something of interest. Along the way, Dante was suddenly attacked by the most unusual demons, at least that's what he thought they were. Each creature he met, he just frowned before pulling Alistair for his place. He began battling them, making his way through these demons, but to his utter disappointment, they were too easy for him. He sliced through them, hoping they would at least be of a challenge to him. But no, they had to be so easy to take on. Soon Dante was in the dead city. He couldn't help but look around. It didn't look much of a city. There weren't really very many buildings, only large coral-looking things, which looked as dead as the city did. It was completely quiet. There didn't seem to be a single person in the entire city. He really did not like it at all. Maybe everyone was dead. Man, what a dump. Dante muttered as he kicked a large flake of stone. It shattered like nothing. He decided to check one of the shell houses, hoping to find someone that could answer some questions. Like the fact where the hell he was. He had no idea what this planet was actually called, not to mention his exact location. He didn't even know where to find the man he was supposed to hunt and kill. Jen had told him that she would take him to where he was, but there wasn't a single person in sight. Dante entered one of the shell houses, frowning at its structure. He really hadn't seen a house like this before. The inside was just like a seashell too. It curled as he went up, finding some kind of room. It had furniture in the room, not like any seashell he ever knew about. He even noticed some kind of glowing writing on the wall. It was in a total different language that he couldn't understand. What was even stranger, he could hear some kind of whispers coming from the walls. Weirded out, Dante left the seashell house to continue his search for answers. He had just walked out when he noticed something that changed since he had been inside. There was someone standing in the middle of the flaky road. Dante's hand immediately swung over his head and grabbed Alastair's handle, but then he paused when he actually saw who the someone was. It was a woman wearing a pink dress with a dusty rose-colored jacket. Her hair was light brown and was pulled into a loose braid. Her long bangs hung over lovely emerald green eyes, which were on him. She had a fair and delicate look about her, almost as if she was an angel. But what surprised Dante more was on how much she looked like Jen. Her features, her body structure, her height and hair, it was just like Jen. Only she was more lighter than his employer. Her hair was lighter, even though she had darker skin, yet it was still a pale peach color. The woman was watching him carefully with her eyes, gazing into his. She seemed to be surprised to see him there, but then she frowned, still looking interested. She looked him over, taking in his appearance and tilting her head in wonder. But then her eyes shifted off to somewhere else. Towards the middle of the city. It was as if she senses something there. Jen, Dante asked, stepping closer towards her. The woman turned her eyes back at him, frowning in confusion. She didn't seem to understand what he was saying, but he had a feeling that she did. She just tilted her head before she turned away and started walking. But with each step she took, the more transparent she became. And soon she had vanished in thin air. What the hell was that? Dante asked himself. Shaking his head, Dante began walking up the path to where she had been going. He came to a four-way fork in the road, but chose to head in the direction the woman had been looking at. The road seemed to lead into a canyon full of the weird white trees. The others seemed to do the same. With a shrug, Dante went down that road. He walked for quite a while until he came to some kind of dark forest with the white trees. Strange as it already was, the trees seemed to glow like the moon. Dante couldn't help but look around in interest, many thoughts going through his mind. Not long later, he came to a large clearing with another seashell house sitting by a small clear lake. Dante frowned as he moved towards the lake, stopping near the water's edge. There was such a strange feeling in the air. A very peaceful but powerful feeling seemed to be haunting this place. There was something about it. It was like there was something hidden here and Dante wanted to know what it was. He looked into the water, staring with a frown. He could feel something in the water. Some kind of aura. It was like there was a life force in it. It felt. Suddenly, Dante was alert when he saw movement at the doorway of the house. He moved very quickly towards the trees, hiding behind one of them. He had both ivory and ebony in his hands, waiting to see what was there. His eyes were narrowed dangerously as he watched who came out. It was a man. He was a very tall man, much taller than him, yet only by at least 5 inches. The man was wearing all black under a large red cloak. His long, raven black hair spilled all around his face, which was quite a pale complexion, but it seemed to suit this man. The man had a red band tied around his head, keeping most of the long bangs out of his eyes. To Dante, this man looked too much like a vampire. But what made him more alert was the golden clawed arm he possessed on his left side. It was no doubt some kind of weapon. There was also a gun bouncing on the man's leg as he walked out. The man, incidentally, was Vincent Valentine. As Dante watched Vincent, he suddenly felt very uneasy. He didn't know why, but there was something about this dark man. There was a dark and powerful aura coming off of him and Dante didn't like it. He had only felt this feeling a few times and that was when he faced off with Arkham and Virgil. He didn't know who this man was, but he knew for certain that he was probably very dangerous. Vincent was unaware that he was being watched, but he was starting to get the feeling. He had just finished reading some of the ancient words when he decided it was time to call it a night. It was getting very late and he was starting to tire, at least a little. He figured that he could just pick up where he left off the very next day. So he left the house, making his way towards the road that led towards the group of houses when he felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise up. And that was not a good sign. Whenever that happened, he knew that someone was watching him. Someone or something very dangerous. The ex-Turk halted from going any farther before looking around very carefully. His ruby-colored eyes searching the area, cautiously. He couldn't see anyone, but he knew that someone was there. Something. His hand was now on his death penalty, ready to whip it out if needed. He flipped his cloak back so that his golden claw was ready to swing if needed. He still looked around, with his chin digging into his neck. "Who's there?" he called. There was no answer at first. But the ex-Turk wasn't going to give up. He narrowed his eyes as he continued to look around. "I can feel your presence. Show yourself or be hunted," he warned in a very dark tone. There was a sudden snort of amusement before someone stepped out from behind a white tree. Vincent whirled around, very alert the very moment he saw the white-haired man with an icy blue stare. But more alert to see that there were a pair of guns in his hands. "Sorry, mister, but I'm the hunter and you're the hunted. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. The next part will be out soon."